as the original event.
Sanctions against Serbia would have an effect opposite of what the U.S. had hoped. The Bosnian Serbs intensified the war. Despairing of finding a political settlement, and with time working against them, the Bosnian Serbs were encouraged to use their military might to score a quick military victory. Muslim forces, on the other hand, would be encouraged to prolong the war as sanctions wore down the Serbs. Because they had troops on the ground in harm's way, the UN and the European community were anxious to settle the conflict in Bosnia through negotiations that would involve compromise. Serbs would have to give up land they controlled, and the Muslim-dominated government would have to give up their claim to rule the whole of Bosnia. The Vance-Owen Plan, which was negotiated in December of 1992, would have ended the fighting by an agreement to decentralize power into 10 administrative units that would be dominated by the different ethnic factions. Although Radovan Karadzic reluctantly agreed to sign the plan, the Serbs were unhappy with the fact that they were divided into isolated enclaves that would be hard to defend. But it was American opposition to the plan that undermined the UN and European diplomats repeatedly.
We were being accused of favoring ethnic cleansing and territorial aggrandizement, and here we were forcing the Serbs back by 39%. Now, I used to always say, give me an example of any plan that has rolled back an undefeated army that amount.
If the UN and the European community had been allowed to bring peace to Bosnia, these institutions would have been strengthened. There would have been less need for American influence and an American-dominated NATO. A European settlement of the Bosnian War would have helped Germany and France in their plans for a Western European Union, which would enable Europeans to defend themselves.
Vance-Owen was not made in the United States of America. It was not made in USA. That the Clinton administration was coming in fresh with its own agenda, and the Clinton folks, would decide what was good for Bosnia-Herzegovina, for the Balkans, for the world. And I think that point of view pervaded the incoming Clinton administration.
Domestic politics in the U.S. also played an important role. President Clinton's future rival for the presidency, Senator Robert Dole, had been an early supporter of Croatian Muslim and Albanian separatists.
I think whatever happens in Bosnia, a large part of the blame is going to be right on the doorstep of this administration, including Secretary Perry. And my view is when you just write off a nation, it's wrong.
The Bosnian Muslims could count on Dole to use his considerable influence to oppose administration policy in Congress. By the spring of 1993, the failure to back the Vance-Owen Plan led to savage fighting between Croat and Muslim forces in west-central Bosnia. In America, this fighting received little coverage because it did not involve the Serbs or fit into existing media categories of good and evil. Perhaps the most realistic peace plan to end the war was proposed in September of 1993, the Owen-Stoltenberg Plan, which would have set up 3 republics on the model of Switzerland. The capital cities of Sarajevo and Mostar would have been placed under UN control. The agreement was ready for the signing when Lord Owen learned that the Americans were encouraging the Muslim faction, headed by Izetbegovic, to hold out for an additional 4% of territory. Under pressure from the State Department's hardline faction, headed by America's UN representative, Madeleine Albright, U.S. Secretary of State Warren Christopher assured Izetbegovic that he had American support in his refusal to sign the agreement.
The United States clearly sabotaged, to the best of its ability, any European attempts at reaching a negotiated solution.
The Americans, not alone, but certainly have been most significant, in my view, of preventing a settlement in the sense that they objected to the particular peace plans thus far. So we have in many ways lost opportunity for what would have been good peace plans.
In frustration, UN and European community negotiators invited the Americans to join the peace talks, along with representatives of a much weakened Russia, now dependent on Western aid. But bloodshed carried on as the Izetbegovic government continued to reject new peace proposals, despite favorable conditions for the Muslims. After all, with tacit American support, Muslim forces were increasingly receiving illegal arms shipments from Islamic states, particularly Iran, but also Turkey, Malaysia, Sudan, and Saudi Arabia. French UN soldiers reported to Lord Owen that American airdrops of humanitarian supplies in eastern Bosnia were often a cover to provide illegal arms to Muslim forces. Some European community monitors were also used to smuggle weapons. According to the German TV network WDR, one such monitor was Christoph von Betzold, who served as an intelligence agent of the BND directing special operations. One of the largest smuggling operations involved the use of mammoth American-made C-130 transport planes to bring weapons into the airport at Tuzla, another Muslim enclave which was given official status as a UN safe zone.
Our supposition was that an arms delivery had taken place and that given the difficulty of the operation and also that jet fighters had also been seen in the vicinity at the time, that the operation probably involved the United States in some way and that at the very least it was probably an American-sanctioned operation. And indeed that was the gist of our reporting to New York.
They were definitely flying in small arms ammo, anti-tank weapons and ammo, and it was a regular shuttle.
Against overwhelming evidence to the contrary from UN and British intelligence sources, U.S. envoy Richard Holbrooke denied the involvement of the U.S. in the illegal arms shipments to Muslim forces at the airport in Tuzla.
The United States didn't do this. We couldn't have done it. If we did a thing like this, American law would require the president to inform Congress under the covert action notification laws, and it would leak, and it didn't happen. It never happened. If there were planes in Tuzla, and I've heard these same reports, they were certainly not American planes.
Holbrooke would later deny that the U.S. helped facilitate Iranian arms shipments to Muslims, despite detailed reports on these activities from the Los Angeles Times as well as European papers. The most important weapon for the Izetbegovic government remained the media. The establishment of so-called safe areas for Muslims, including Sarajevo, provided a trigger for Western intervention. There was nothing safe, however, about these areas. The Serbian residents of these enclaves had already been killed or driven off early in the war. Out of a population of 30,000 Serbs in Bihać, only 1,000 remained, according to reports of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Virtually all the Serbs in Gorazde and Srebrenica had been driven off or killed by 1993. Despite the safe zone designation, Muslim civilians could not be protected either, because these enclaves were never demilitarized. Indeed, with weapons smuggled in by Americans, Germans, and Islamic countries, local Muslim militias were encouraged to attack surrounding Serbian villages, to provoke a counter-response from the Serbs. On February 5th, the Markale marketplace exploded, killing 68 people and injuring several hundred others in downtown Sarajevo. As the dead were being carted away for burial, the crucial question was who was responsible for this brutal act of terrorism? If the Serbs were responsible, an American-sponsored UN resolution gave NATO the power to bomb Serbian targets. The U.S. State Department was quick to blame the Serbs.
Frankly, it is very hard to believe that any country would do this to its own people, and therefore, although we do not know exactly yet what the facts are, it would seem to us that the Serb and the Bosnian Serbs are the ones that probably have a great deal of responsibility.